All right, welcome to the Deep Dives. We're diving straight into the incredible story of Osiris, one of ancient Egypt's most enduring and profoundly important gods.
Absolutely. His narrative is just woven into the very fabric of Egyptian life, death, kingship, the promise of rebirth. It really touches on, well, everything.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from a really rich stack of sources looking at classic historical accounts like Diodorus Siculus, alongside ancient mythological texts found in places like the pyramid texts or, say, the Kernafret Stela.
Yeah, and we've also consulted modern research and interpretations that help us kind of piece it all together.
Our mission today is to really unpack these sources and understand not just the facts about Osiris, but, the deeper insights. Who was he truly? How did his story maybe change, and what did it actually mean to the Egyptians?
What are the absolute essential takeaways about this god who ruled both the living and the dead?
Let's unpack this. When we first meet Osiris in the myths, he's not the lord of the underworld yet, is he? Sources paint a picture of him as this benevolent, civilizing king of the living.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Diodorus Siculus, for instance, describes Osiris basically traveling the world, teaching people agriculture, establishing laws, introducing things like winemaking and piety.
Right. He was seen as bringing culture and order to Egypt, ushering in a kind of golden age almost.
And his typical appearance, even from this time, it already carries so much symbolic weight. You see him depicted with green or black skin.
Which are incredibly powerful visual cues in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Green representing the lush vegetation, life, rebirth.
And black symbolizing the rich, fertile soil of the Nile Valley, the source of that life and agriculture he supposedly brought.
Right, and even before his death, his legs are often shown kind of partially wrapped like a mummy, maybe a hint of what's to come.
Could be. And he wears the Atef crown, that tall white crown of Upper Egypt, but with those distinct ostrich feathers on the sides. And he holds the iconic symbols of pharaonic power.
The crook and flail. The crook is usually seen as the shepherd's staff, guiding the people.
While the flail's meaning is a bit more debated, maybe it's a whip for correction, or a fly whisk, or possibly linked to a very ancient Delta god and Kambajeti, who Osiris kind of absorbed aspects of.
But together they absolutely scream authority and kingship.
Definitely. And his immediate family, they are just central to this whole story. It's almost like a divine soap opera.
They really are the core cast, aren't they? He's the firstborn child of Geb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess.
His siblings are Isis, Set, and Nephthys, and sometimes you see Horus the Elder mentioned in older accounts. Crucially for the myth, though, he is the brother and husband of Isis.
Yeah, marrying sisters was a way to keep divine power consolidated within the family line in Egyptian mythology. It wasn't unusual for the gods.
He's also the father of Horus, although that happens under really extraordinary circumstances we're definitely going to get to.
And some traditions also say he fathered Anubis with Nephthys, his other sister, which adds, well, a layer of complexity, maybe even motive, to the central conflict.
This family dynamic, particularly that intense rivalry between Osiris and his brother Set, it's basically the powder keg for the most famous and honestly the darkest part of his myth.
This is where it gets really dramatic. Set's jealousy just boiled over. It seems fueled by different things depending on the source you read. Sometimes it's just raw envy of Osiris's popularity and successful rule.
But other accounts point to that tradition where Nephthys, who is Set's wife, seduced Osiris, maybe tricked him, resulting in Anubis's birth. And that supposedly enraged Set.
Right. Regardless of the exact spark, Set devises this incredibly cunning plan. He secretly commissions this beautiful chest, essentially a coffin, but custom-made to fit Osiris perfectly.
Then he throws this huge party, invites Osiris and a bunch of other gods, and brings out the chest, casually offering it as a prize. Hey, whoever fits inside gets to keep it.
It's such a blatant trap. And Osiris, maybe a bit too trusting or perhaps just intrigued by the beautiful chest, he lies down in it.
As soon as he's in, Set and his cronies slam the lid shut, seal it, some sources even say, with molten lead, and then they just heave the whole thing into the Nile.
Wow. But Osiris's story doesn't end there, does it? Not by a long shot, thanks entirely to the devotion of his sister wife, Isis.
Her quest to find him is one of the most epic searches in mythology. She eventually tracks the chest all the way to Byblus on the Phoenician coast. It's incredible.
Yeah, the story goes it had washed ashore and a beautiful tamarisk tree grew around it, enclosing the chest. The local king, not knowing what was inside, cut the tree down and used it as a pillar in his palace.
So Isis has to get it back from there. She retrieves the chest, brings it back to Egypt. But Set's cruelty isn't finished.
No, not at all. When Set finds out Isis has brought the body back, he is absolutely furious. In this terrible act of rage, he finds the body, dismembers it into many pieces, and scatters them all across Egypt.
And this is where the sources give us different numbers for the pieces you see 14, 16, 26, or sometimes even 42 mentioned.
That variation itself is interesting, isn't it? Possibly linking to the number of Egyptian nomes, the administrative districts, or maybe even the 42 judges in the afterlife tribunal?
Could be. The really important point, though, is the sheer fragmentation, the utter violation of the body. It's meant to prevent his proper burial and resurrection.
Isis, however, is just not deterred. With incredible determination, now aided by her sister Nephthys and sometimes Anubis too, she embarks on this monumental quest across the entire land to find every single scattered fragment of Osiris.
It's such a powerful image of tireless love and perseverance. She finds almost all of them piece by piece, traveling from site to site.
Almost all, except for one crucial piece, the phallus. It was said to have been eaten by an oxyrhynchus fish in the Nile.
And this detail is often cited as the reason why that specific fish was considered taboo, forbidden food in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
A direct consequence of the myth.
Despite the missing piece, Isis's magic is formidable. Sources describe her using powerful spells, sometimes even transforming herself into a kite, a type of bird of prey, hovering over his body to breathe life back into him.
And this moment is absolutely critical. It allows her to magically conceive their son, Horus, the son who will ultimately grow up to challenge Set and avenge his father.
So Osiris is brought back in a way, but he's incomplete. He suffered this violent, unnatural death and dismemberment. This profoundly changes his place in the cosmos, doesn't it?
It really does, because his body was damaged and he had, died. He could no longer fully rule the land of the living as he had before. His authority fundamentally shifts.
He becomes the eternal ruler of the realm of the dead, the sovereign of the Duat, which is the Egyptian underworld.
Exactly. And his titles reflect this new, solemn role. Lord of the Underworld, Judge of the Dead, Lord of Silence. There's Kentia Mentu, which means foremost of the Westerners.
Right, linking death symbolically to the west, where the sun sets. That's where the Egyptians believed the entrance to the afterlife was.
He's also called Wennefer, often translated as the Beautiful One, or perhaps more accurately, the one who continues to be perfect, which speaks to his enduring power and authority even, maybe especially in the afterlife.
And this transition from being a living king to the king of the dead, it marked a major evolution in Egyptian religious thought, especially concerning royalty, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In the really early Old Kingdom times, pharaohs were primarily thought to join the sun god Ra in his journey across the sky after death. But as the cult of Osiris grew in popularity and importance,
kings began associating with him in death. They believed that by mirroring Osiris's resurrection, particularly through the elaborate process of mummification, they too could achieve eternal life in his kingdom.
And central to Osiris's role as ruler of the dead is that crucial event every single soul apparently faced, the judgment of the dead.
This is the moment of truth, isn't it? The deceased soul enters this great hall and faces a tribunal of 42 divine judges, often called the assessors of Ma'at.
And the absolute pivot point, the core of it all, is the weighing of the heart ceremony. On this huge scale, the heart of the deceased person is balanced against the feather of Ma'at.
And Ma'at represents truth, justice, cosmic order, harmony, basically the fundamental balance the Egyptians believed kept the universe running. So the heart is being weighed against a life lived righteously.
Precisely. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of writing and wisdom, stands ready to record the outcome. And lurking nearby is the terrifying creature, Amit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippo, the soul eater, waiting.
Okay, so what happens based on how the heart weighs in? What are the outcomes?
Well, if the heart is lighter than the feather, meaning the person lived a good life, in harmony with Ma'at, practicing truth and justice, they are declared true of voice.
Which means they pass the test.
Yes, they're welcomed into Osiris's kingdom for a blissful eternal existence. Some sources also mention a kind of purification process first, maybe on a place called Flame Island, even for the justified.
And if the heart is heavy, weighed down by sin, wrongdoing, failure to live according to Ma'at,
then Amit devours the heart. And it's really important to understand this isn't like later, say, medieval Christian concepts of eternal torment or hellfire.
Right. The sources suggest it's total annihilation, non-being. The soul, the personality, simply ceases to exist. For the Egyptians, that was arguably a worse fate than any punishment. The complete loss of identity, the end of ever being.
It's telling how deeply ingrained this belief was that even earthly justice sometimes invoked him. Sources mention during Seti Asarte's reign, Osiris was specifically called upon in royal decrees to pursue people who tried to hide their wrongdoings.
Wow. The idea being, even if they escaped human justice, Osiris's judgment awaited them. His cosmic authority really extended into worldly morality and accountability.
Absolutely. But beyond the Judgment Hall, Osiris's story is also profoundly visually linked to the most vital thing in Egyptian life, the natural cycle.
Absolutely. His death and resurrection became the ultimate divine parallel for the fertility of the land, especially that annual, life-giving flood of the Nile River.
Think about it. The river recedes, the land looks dead, dry, barren. Then the Nile floods, bringing that incredibly rich black silt, depositing it, and then receding again to reveal land ready for life, for vegetation to just sprout anew.
It's this constant cycle of apparent death followed by vibrant rebirth.
And his green skin depictions perfectly embody this connection to vegetation, the fertile earth, and that constant life-giving renewal power of the Nile. In a way, he is that cycle.
And this cyclical nature, this divine death and rebirth, it offered a much deeper philosophical message for the Egyptians than just, ensuring good crop yields.
Oh, for sure. It offered the promise of new beginnings, not just for the harvest, but for the individual human soul. Osiris's own triumph over death provided the template, the blueprint, and the hope for everyone to achieve their own form of resurrection and continuation in the afterlife.
Sources even connect him to astronomical cycles, like the heliacal rising of the star Sirius and the constellation Orion, which were observed to herald the beginning of the Nile flood each year, tying him into these grand, predictable rhythms of the cosmos itself.
Given all this, his role in life, death, judgment, rebirth, nature, it's completely understandable that the worship of Osiris was incredibly widespread and endured for millennia.
It really did. It spanned from potentially pre-dynastic times, even before unified Egypt, all the way through the Roman Empire. We're talking well over 3,000 years of active worship.
And he had major cult centers throughout Egypt. Abydos in Upper Egypt was arguably his most important primary center, a huge pilgrimage site where people wanted to be buried near him.
Osiris in the Delta was another key place, maybe his original home. And Heliopolis, the city of the sun god Ra, also had significant connections to Osiris.
The cult practices at Abydos, especially those public annual ceremonies, sound extraordinary. The Iconophrate stela from the 12th dynasty gives us this fantastic, detailed account of a 5-day dramatic reenactment of the entire Osiris myth.
Yeah, it wasn't just priests behind closed doors, was it? This was a major public festival. It involved mock battles between Osiris's followers and the enemies of Osiris.
Processions carrying a sacred boat, the Neshmet bark, which represented Osiris, and people would symbolically defend it.
There were days of ritual mourning, night vigils, culminating in this dramatic symbolic rebirth at dawn on the 5th day, where a figure or image of Osiris was crowned with the crown of Mahat, signifying his triumph and return to the temple. It must have been a profoundly immersive experience for the whole community.
Absolutely. And alongside these public spectacles, there were these fascinating, more esoteric rituals performed by priests, like the ones Plutarch mentions involving mixing fertile soil with Nile water to shape figures.
But what's really striking are the Osiris beds, or Osiris gardens.
Yes. These figures of Osiris, molded out of Nile mud mixed with grain, usually barley or emmer wheat, were placed in molds, sometimes shaped like Osiris himself or in troughs. They were then watered and allowed to sprout.
It's such a potent living symbol of resurrection, isn't it? The god himself, or at least a representation of him, literally dying and being reborn through the earth and the grain.
Examples of these have even been found in tombs, like Tutankhamun's, showing how personal this symbolism was, connecting the deceased king directly to Osiris's regenerative power. These rituals are also documented at places like Mendes in the Delta.
And at Mendes, he was particularly worshipped in a specific form, the Nebjadet. What was that about?
The Nebjadet means something like the Ba, or soul, of the Lord of the Jed. He was seen as the potent soul or life force of Osiris, often depicted as a ram, which was a symbol of virility, power, and creative force.
Which ties into another really powerful symbol directly linked to Osiris, the Jed pillar. It looks like a column with 4 horizontal bars near the top.
Exactly. It's often interpreted as representing Osiris's backbone, symbolizing stability, endurance, resurrection power. It's this visual representation of his strength and continuation, despite the chaos and the dismemberment he suffered. Raising the Jed pillar was a key ritual signifying Osiris's triumph over Set, and the restoration of order.
So if we kind of zoom out, what does this all mean for the average Egyptian back then? What was the ultimate legacy of Osiris?
I think fundamentally, his story offered profound comfort and hope. It reframed death not as a final terrifying end, but as a transition, a doorway.
And crucially, eternal life wasn't just for the pharaoh anymore, was it? It became potentially attainable for anyone, provided they lived a righteous life according to Ma'at, and underwent the proper funerary rituals, like mummification, modeled after Osiris.
Exactly, and his myth fundamentally shaped the very identity of Egyptian kingship. The living ruler was seen as Horus, the son who avenges his father and maintains cosmic order on earth.
But upon death, the king became Osiris, inheriting his father's power and achieving eternal life in the underworld. Even those core royal regalia, the crook and the flail, originated as his symbols.
And his influence stretched far beyond Egypt's borders and times. During the Hellenistic period, after Alexander the Great, you see the creation of Serapis.
Oh, right, the syncretic god.
Yeah, combining Osiris, specifically the Apis bull aspect from Memphis, which was linked to Osiris, with Greek gods like Zeus and Hades. Serapis became a major international deity, especially worshipped in Alexandria.
And the cult of his devoted wife, Isis, which is just inextricably linked to Osiris's story of loss and recovery, spread throughout the entire Roman world.
It became one of the most popular mystery cults, offering personal salvation and initiation, and it remarkably outlasted many other pagan belief systems well into the Christian era.
It's truly remarkable how enduring his narrative was. You can almost see echoes of these core themes: death and resurrection, judgment based on deeds, overcoming chaos, the promise of renewal resonating through later religious and philosophical thought in various ways.
It's true. And the temple complex at Philae, which was primarily dedicated to Isis but deeply connected to the Osiris myth, was one of the very last ancient Egyptian temples to remain active. They were still practicing the cult there late into the 5th century CE. That kind of staying power really speaks volumes about its importance.
It really does make you pause and think about the deep human needs these ancient stories speak to. So we've journeyed through Osiris's narrative from that benevolent king bringing civilization,
through his tragic betrayal and horrific dismemberment,
his powerful rebirth, thanks to Isis, as the solemn ruler and, importantly, the just judge of the underworld,
and his fundamental role as a symbol of cyclical renewal, fertility, and the hope for life after death.
His myth wasn't just a series of fantastic events. It was truly a foundational narrative that shaped ancient Egyptian civilization's entire understanding of the cosmos, of life, death, morality, and the enduring hope for eternity.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe something for you, our listener, to consider. Why do these ancient stories of loss, perseverance, and return, like Osiris's, hold such seemingly universal power? Why do these narratives about overcoming death and achieving renewal seem to echo in human hopes and fears that still resonate with us so deeply?